Welcome back to Geek Warning, the podcast from Escape Collective that discusses all things cycling tech. I'm Dave Rome. Joining me this week,
Ronan and Laughlin.
Hello, Ronan. Just the two of us again this week. How have things been? Are you back on the bike?
Oh, yeah. Very, very much so. Back on the bike.
Okay.
Yeah, there was actually a race at the weekend and I was crewing on that rather than participating. Yeah, my dad was riding an ultra-endurance race.
Runs in the family.
But that definitely had me feeling like I was missing out.
Yeah, right.
Luckily, it was a very bad day for... It was dry enough, but it was just like gale force winds, so it was like it wasn't too bad a FOMO, but definitely had me thinking, yeah, I'm ready to start thinking about what's next, even though I said there would be nothing next.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Well, that made me thought of a stupid joke, which is what does diarrhea and the McLaughlins doing ultras have in common?
I don't know where you're going with this, but go on.
It runs in the genes.
Oh, God. Yeah.
We may not keep that. Anyway.
Okay. The problem with the ultras is that it runs up the genes, whereas these things are supposed to run down the genes. So I'm not sure if it quite works.
Yeah, fair. How do you do? How do you fare? Did he finish the day?
He was 7th. It was 222 kilometers. And he finished 7th. He was, after that distance, he was like 50 something seconds off 6th place.
Oh well.
Which I would have been like beating myself up about, but we had like pretty well optimized every part of that system. Not that he asked me to or knew much about it, but I just couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, there wasn't really much we could have done, and he executed it better than I do these things. So yeah.
How many times did he stop to adjust his cleats?
None.
Yeah.
I mean, none.
Yeah.
That's just mind-boggling.
Not hereditary. All right. Some things to learn from the pops then.
Definitely.
All right. Well, that's good to hear that you're back on the bike. And yeah, I think with that, I think we've got some things on our mind this week. So yet another quiet week in terms of the news. But
I feel like I should ask you, what did you do over the weekend?
I got rained out, so I just played with bikes over the weekend. I largely stayed in the workshop and breathed in the salt crystals of someone's 15-year-old Pinarello Dogma that I agreed to tune up without realizing that it was actually just a carbon frame with pretty reasonable paint quality on it, but surrounded by corrosion. So it's nasty.
That corrosion in those salt crystals, they weren't because this guy lives near the sea.
I think there is an element of that. I think the bike had sat for 5+ years, and I think prior to that it had sat on an indoor trainer. So yeah, it had an interesting level of corrosion, and I still have one bidden cage bolt to finish drilling out, and then I'll have 2 roof nuts in the frame to replace, and then I can start reassembling the thing. So it's a fun one. It's a project, we'll put it that way. So
I mean, the fact that it is 5 years since it sat on a trainer means that, any bacteria or whatever in there's probably long dead at this point.
You'd think that. The smell said otherwise. Anyway, it's gross. But anyway.
Lovely.
Yeah. So, well, this week we've got some things on our mind. I've been testing tools for my next threaded and a much anticipated product shootouts. Sorry, it's not yet the air inflators. That's still to come. We've got a PSA, and we've got a couple of little bits of news. And finally, Ronan, you're going to join me this week for Ask a Wrench in our members only section of the episode at the end.
I feel like to make sure that people don't tune out before that, I should clarify that I'm going to host and you're going to be the wrench answering the questions.
Sure. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Brad had a little bike race called Leadville that has drawn him away, and I was a bit slack and left it too late to get Zach on the podcast, who we haven't heard from for a little while. But instead, you'll just get me. But we'll save that for the end. Ronan, this week, the big topic, something that's been on my mind, and I think you might agree with me on this one, which is that everything seems to progress forward in cycling when we look at the bikes and what they're capable of doing. And big picture, I think as things progress, it creates gaps behind from where those things once came from. And I guess like the simplest way I could explain this is with mountain bikes. Like mountain bikes have progressively had more weight added to them. They've gotten more suspension travel. They've gotten slacker in their geometry, longer, just more capable for increasingly difficult terrain. But through that, we've sort of left a gap behind what a mountain bike used to be used for, which is largely like gravel roads and riding far into the mountains. And that's what gravel bikes have come through and quite successfully covered the gap of. And I think that's where we're seeing these suspension-equipped gravel bikes coming in pretty quickly, and they're really filling the gap of like what a cross-country mountain bike used to be 5 to 10 years ago. That is, that those bikes are now since moved on to designed around tackling much harder courses and riding. So, but I think the trend continues, and I think it sort of rings true. Like the more I thought about it, the more I thought like every category of bike ends up progressing forward in a way that leaves a new interesting market gap behind it. And yeah, I don't know. I think even like in your world, like the aero bikes, like as we get more integrated and proprietary, you see like the bikes like Specialized Athos, for example, came in, where it's just like kind of the opposite of all that. It was back to round tubes, lightweight, nothing fancy in the headset, just simplicity. And it was from what I can tell, it was a big success. I think it's probably largely due for an update at this point, but it's still, you see, at least in Sydney, I see quite a few of them around. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I think I hear that there is an updated Athos in the works. But
Makes sense.
That's not really what you're asking me. But I think it's actually a topic that I'd been thinking over as well of late, and maybe not really realized it. And as we were discussing this before we had record, the point that came up was like, basically, the last time I had a mountain bike, so we're talking maybe 12 or 13 years ago, maybe more. But everyone locally here, anyone who had a mountain bike, what they rode it on was now what we ride gravel bikes on, and what a gravel bike is right for. Mm-hmm. And if I were to get a mountain bike now to use it in its intended use case, I would have to drive somewhere to a trail center or to whatever, just to get the most out of it. But yeah, gravel bikes came along and sort of filled the gap, as you see it, that mountain bikes had left. But I kind of wonder if it happened the other way around, in that they didn't backfill, in that they replaced, and then mountain bikes moved on. In that, the mountain bikes hadn't moved on 12 or 13 years ago, I don't think, and left a space for gravel to move into. Gravel just moved into this space, was better suited to that space, and then it freed up mountain bikes to be doing other things.
Yeah, I think there's probably some coincidental timing there, because certainly amongst that, like what largely led, say, the cross-country mountain bike to progress the way it has is like course development at the World Cup level. So,
and wheel size, maybe, no?
Yeah, certainly, and that played into it. But like the technology to pursue like increasing speed over increasingly difficult terrain has led to a lot of courses now in a cross-country World Cup demand like big tires, grippy tires. 2.4s are so common now. Most athletes are on 120 mil suspension just because that's the right option for what they race on. Most athletes use a dropper post because some of the features are so steep and high risk. So yeah, I think that's led into if the most skilled and fastest racers in the world need this stuff, then so does a punter as well would benefit from a more capable, more forgiving bike. And I think that's sort of what led the change. And you can still get short travel cross-country mountain bikes at, typically you see them at like Leadville these days with drop handlebars. But I think they're fewer and far between these days. I think that category of like the hardtail, for example, the 100 mil travel fork hardtail mountain bike I think that has largely been replaced by the gravel bike market. Again, they still exist.
But I kind of wonder if like what we've seen at Leadville this past weekend, and if you think back 10, 15 years ago to riders using cyclocross bikes in the space that we now have gravel bikes, if that's sort of a canary in the coal mine or an indicator of what is about to come next, and where the backfill opportunity lies.
Yeah.
And that how many years can we keep seeing the pros turning up at Leadville on drop bar full suspension mountain bikes before the industry just does the inevitable and actually just turns to making full suspension gravel bikes, because at the moment we're hacking these things to make them work, and that kind of feels like what we were doing 15 years ago with to make gravel bikes, and the industry filled that gravel bike space. I think
Leadville's such a unique beast because it is still a mountain bike race. So like we saw Kate Courtney take the win and the course record on a mountain bike. No drop bars there. The men's was won by Keegan, which was drop handlebars and very much an adapted bike. But it's I think that's still a unique space. But yeah, I totally agree. I think we've already seen a tease of Trek that they've been working on a full suspension gravel bike, and I don't doubt that they'll be joined by others in the future. I think that's a category that Niner tried quite a few years ago, and I think they're just too early and a little off with what that product needed to be. But yeah, I think that is certainly one area that the industry is going to head to. It's like these short travel gravel bikes, full suspension gravel bikes that realistically are like what a full suspension cross country race mountain bike was 10, 15 years ago, and it's sort of, again, that gap has been opened.
Yeah, well, I mean, it feels like we're talking about it every week for the past month or whatever. So, but at some point, I can't remember if it was on the podcast or on a meeting or something. Also, we had that new Trek that was spotted came up, and I had asked the question: is it a full suspension gravel race bike or a full suspension gravel adventure bike? I think it was Josh that answered it's an adventure race bike, which I just thought was so typical of what are we even talking about here? So yeah, looking at that and the name that I've heard rumored that it's going to adopt suggests to me it is more of an adventure orientated bike, which I think still leaves that backfilling space for the full suspension race bike that I feel is probably inevitably happening at some point. Whether or not, that's not me saying we need it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I see an opportunity there. And I think that's what you're maybe talking about here also when we're talking about backfilling, is like an opportunity presents itself and it gets backfilled. And actually then a few years later, we're like, oh, that's kind of a good thing that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like this, like the more I think about it, the more it applies to every category of cycling. And we look at road, for example, bikes have gotten so integrated, and I gave the example of the Athos before, but we're actually now seeing, like, as the industry seems to be coming back to aero bikes as being the fastest option in racing, which they are the fastest option, we are now seeing a lot of brands return to like ultra lightweight bikes that we haven't had for quite a few years, just because disc brakes and all these other things have left a gap in the market for these lightweight bikes that people once flocked to and absolutely loved. And so yeah, I mean, that Scott Addict, for example, is not necessarily going to be the sort of bike that you see its pros electing to choose. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the fastest option for their top tier races. But although I think Pidcock might be racing on one fairly regularly. But yeah, I do still think it's it's filling a gap for a market that's kind of been left open in a sense. That's, you could argue disc brake created, but yeah, either way, we're here.
Yes, sometimes I think there's an explanation to the bikes that we see launched and when we see them announced and this, that, and then other times I just think it's just completely random. And some brands are moving away from the two bike solution, and some are moving into one bike to rule them all, and others are moving back to having two separate options. And
then there's Factor, which has 4 options.
And Cervelo, who launches a new bike every other week.
Yeah.
But like we discussed this off mic as well. It's just at the moment it seems like the one space that is missing is just a real affordable entry point into, you'd said, into road bikes, and I would go a step further and say I was thinking about this recently. Like if I happen to own a bike brand or start a bike brand or whatever, I think the space that would most interest me is like making the most affordable racing road bike possible, and what you could do in that space. And it's probably not going to be carbon and that, but that's at the moment, we've talked about it time and time again in the podcast, but that's really the bikes that sort of got many of us into road racing when we started just don't really exist anymore.
Or they're just, they're very few and far between that no one really knows about them as well. But yeah, I think that it's definitely missing. Like you look at all the top brands, and a lot of them, I think Cannondale might be the one exception that still kind of has a decent quality rim brake bike that's designed to hit a price point. But I don't see that available for sale very many places. I don't know what it's like in your market, but here it's almost non-existent. But yeah, I think things like disc brakes and the pursuit of integrating cables through headsets and all these things have just only risen prices without really providing a better product at this lower end. And yeah, I do see a genuine gap in that entry-level market. And maybe we might see the return of rim brakes in a way of making a weight competitive, nice riding bike that can hit a low price point. I don't know who would be the first to do that, but I could actually genuinely see that being successful.
But I don't really think that's the way to go. Like, I mean, it just puts the focus on the thing that we can quantify on a shop floor, the thing that we can feel on a shop floor, the weight.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, if, at least in my mind, an affordable bike also needs to be something that allows you to, that grows with you as you progress in the sport. If you're buying it, there will be many listeners who probably want to buy affordable bikes, even though they're long-time cyclists. But if we're talking about getting people into the sport, we're not going to get them into the sport with 15 grand bikes. It's going to be the cheapest bikes possible. And so those bikes will probably grow as those people progress in the sport. And if it's rim brake, their options for wheel sets, their options for everything are just going to be so much limited.
No, you're right. I'm just hoping. I'm just hoping for something that's really not going to happen. But I guess like there are affordable drop bar bikes happening. Which Canyon had one come out quite recently. State, if you're in the US, has fills that gap fairly well. Questionable on how much I love all of their component choices, but I mean it does exist to hit a certain price point. So these bikes do exist, but I think fundamentally I think your point is probably that it's the racing bike, the performance bike for someone that wants to join a fast group ride, or perhaps even enter some local criteriums. That sort of bike doesn't really exist without really shopping secondhand at the moment. So
and the Canyon that was well priced was like sub £1,000. Was released there recently. Was it the Endurance All Road? Maybe it was called.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, like the hint is in the name there.
Yeah,
Endure is all road.
Yep.
If you're a college kid looking to get into bike racing, it's not going to be the bike for you. And the options there that are going to be the bike for you are kind of few and far between. And even that bike was sold out within 3.5 seconds of going on release.
It was. Yeah, they couldn't even get me a sample to test. I asked for one a week before they released the bike, and it was like, sorry, we missed it. So yeah. I'll kind
of wonder how that happens though when it's direct to consumer and hadn't yet appeared on their website, how it could be already sold out.
Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, affordable bikes, and not just like on paper affordable, but actually available also.
What I think, and apologies to the friend that I was discussing this with, and I can't remember who it was, but we were discussing what is really missing, and what used to be so cool is you used to get like I can't even remember the model name, but like Trek, for example, used to do entry-level versions of like its US postal bikes.
Yeah, that's what got me into the sport. The Trek 1000 in US Postal Service.
It might have been you I was talking about with this. I hope we haven't recorded a podcast about this, but yeah, and I remember like my first real road bike, which was a Cannondale CAD 5. And now I just remembered who I was talking about this with. They sold me the bike. So a Cannondale CAD 5, I had it was basically in Seiko colors. And like that's so cool. Like, if you're watching the Tour de France on TV, and which is again, it's huge at the moment. And you walk into the bike shop and you see the bike that a pro rider, the bike that looks like what a pro rider's just ridden, you're probably going to want to buy that. But it needs to be affordable. And I think, brands could perhaps really learn on that and perhaps rekindle some of the old vibes that used to sell a lot of bikes.
That is 100%. I think I am proof of how that works. And that, I wanted all I knew is that I wanted a bike with the triangular handlebars. uh, which in hindsight was actually a triathlon bike. But we got a road racing bike, but the one that, yeah, it had progressed. By the time we got to buying it, it had progressed to the one that Lance Armstrong was riding. And I didn't know that I didn't have a Trek 5500 with Dura-Ace and, carbon frame. I just knew that this Trek 1000 I had said Trek on it and had the same colors.
Yeah.
And was enough to get me hooked in the sport.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I think if you're listening to this and you're on a bike that's 5 or 10 years old, you might actually find that one, the latest equivalent of your bike has progressed on to be something slightly different or try to be faster or more comfortable or something. But in turn, I think you'll probably find that there's some benefit to the bike that you're on that the new one doesn't offer, which may or may not be right for how you ride the bike. So yeah, I mean, there's many ways we could take this conversation, but I think that's probably the main point. Is this backfilling seems to be a forever truth in the bike industry, and entry-level bikes are the category that needs to be backfilled.
Yeah, just on that, Dave, and not to go down last week's rabbit hole again, but I had a sort of a realization this morning in that, last week we were talking about how the UCI rules, or how not following UCI frame approval might make for better bikes for us. And one point I realized this morning was, well, actually, if you ignored the frame approval process, you could use fairings. And if you could have a fairing on the front of your head tube instead of routing your cables through the head tube, how wouldn't that just make for better bikes especially for mechanics like yourself?
Yeah, I think that is certainly an area where I think the backfilling we'll see is like as gravel bikes, there's a number on the market now that are getting very aero and very integrated, and as a turn, very difficult to like adjust in fit and relatively difficult to maintain. And I think through that we'll probably see brands succeed in selling things that are just blatantly simple, and they are already succeeding in doing that. But I think we'll see some more big brands realize that there's a gap in their own ranges to offer such a bike.
As bikes get more expensive, but also so much more complicated.
Yeah,
like just look at some of the super bikes that are coming out now. They maybe leave that backfilling space for the less complex, less compliant alternatives that are maybe going to be better for the average rider.
Yeah. So.
And every mechanic.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway, let's. I think we can end it there. We might maybe expect a little article covering that topic at some point, but for now, it was on our mind, and thought we would get it off the list. So. All right, I'm going to jump around a little bit in this episode, and I think one of the last things we'll do before getting to the members-only section of the podcast is talk about another thing on my mind, which aligns to something I've basically spent the entire week testing and doing some final checks and measurements of after a decade of actual testing these things. So there you go. That's a teaser for the end of the episode. But let's get to a PSA, which is... watch out for worn bearings. There's a few thoughts on this, but generally I think most people tend to neglect their sealed bearings, thinking that they're sealed, and the general thought is that they're not going to go anywhere and that things will get rougher and rougher and all will be fine. And then eventually, once they're too rough, you service the thing and you replace the bearing and all is well again. But I think it's worth just putting a little bit of education out there, which is sealed bearings can fail catastrophically if worn out. And even before that point, they can get to a point of roughness where they no longer are working the way they should. And the things that shouldn't be sliding on them start sliding on them and start wearing out. And examples of this include, like, if your bottom bracket bearings start to fail or start to wear out, you can actually start to cause some pretty significant spindle damage, like wear on the spindle of your crank. Or I've also seen it in like rear hubs where the bearing gets worn enough that the axle is no longer like a tight fit to the bearing interface, and instead the axle starts spinning within the bearing race, and you wear out the hub axle rather than wearing out the bearing, and then things get really expensive. So yeah, I think it's just a PSA that bearings are a wear item, and when they start feeling rough, it's good to replace them before they potentially cause more damage elsewhere.
I actually just seen an example of this a week or two ago, but long story short, a writer had come to me with a squeaky pedal. It was a power meter pedal, and as it turned out, it was actually just the bearings were they were they were that badly gone. They were literally gone. Their bearings weren't even in the pedal anymore.
It was just a race to the end.
Yeah, and yeah, long story short, I had it was the Favero Asiomas, the original duos, and so I had a pedal body happened to be lying here from when I broke a power pod a few years back, and yeah, but long story short, it had gone so far we had to replace the pedal body, and I was kind of saying, look, we're kind of it's bad the way it was, but we're lucky that we haven't actually damaged the spindle, because that would have probably rendered your power meter useless. And as it was, they just needed a new pedal body. But yeah, you could, just a simple bearing, and that's a 2-minute job to replace the bearings in those Asiomas is so easy done. It could be the difference between having to spend another €600-700 on a new power meter, or €6 or €7 on a new bearing.
For sure. So yeah, I think anywhere where there's bearings in your bike, I think it's worth treating them like a wear item that needs service and attention. And yeah, I think any play or any grittiness, I think replace them sooner rather than later. Like, yes, in some scenarios you can just ride them into the ground and nothing will happen, but in other scenarios things can go really bad and end up costing you a lot that you don't expect. So perhaps the most common example we can give is one we talk about often, which is the ring of death on a fork. And that can often be caused by headset bearings that have worn out and are no longer basically holding tight. And they start to allow play in the fork, and that play ends up abrading a ring around the fork. So I think that's a good way to highlight the issue, but it certainly applies to everywhere else where there's bearings in the bike. So there you have it. Check your bearings. Get them replaced sooner rather than later. For some people, it's going to be every season. For others, it might be years. But your results will vary.
Very probably depending on where you live, not just how much you ride, and kind of the conditions you ride in.
Yeah, and how good your bearings are. All right, I think it's time to head over to the tech news corner. There's a few little bits of news, and that makes me think, Ronan, did I at the beginning say there's no news this week?
Well, the news is that there is news, if that's what you did say.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember if that's what you said or not.
All right. First on the list is a very quick one, which is number 6, which is the carbon division of number 22, the titanium brand out of the US. They have yet another fork in their lineup. This one is called the Suspension Correct gravel fork, which you may guess by the name is a suspension corrected gravel fork. And it's quite as simple as that. So if you've got a gravel bike that is built around like a 40 millimeter travel suspension fork, and you want a nice carbon rigid fork for it, this is yet another option to consider. This one works with both. It's got internal cable routing options. It's 430 millimeter axle to crown, so like right in line with like a Fox or RockShox or Cane Creek suspension fork, and it looks the goods. I think it's $600. So high end, but not crazy, and not much more to say about it. But I thought this one was quite interesting because I own a Santa Cruz Stigmata, and I was lucky enough to get my hands on a rigid fork for it. But I've heard from other people that that's not something that you can normally purchase. So I think it's a fork like this makes a lot of sense if you were to buy a bike that came with a suspension fork and you actually want to switch back and forth occasionally. I think sometimes you're gonna have to look after market. So it's nice to have options.
How often do you think you would make a change if you had the option?
Right now, not very often. I find that it's a little bit painful with internal cable routing. I think if you were an athlete with sort of event goals in mind, you'd probably make that change based on what the event ahead held. But for me, around here, where I'm not doing events all that often, and I'm mainly just riding chunkier gravel, I've sort of taken the rigid fork off, and I haven't really looked back in the last 2 months since I've done that. So I'm just enjoying the suspension forks, and right now I'm not missing a great deal of the rigid fork, but I think if I were to like end up with just one drop bar bike, I'd probably perhaps consider putting the rigid fork back on, treating it more as a road leaning bike than what I do at the moment. So it depends. But yeah, anyway. All right, next on the list, lucky last bit of news for the week is Fara have a new bike. Firstly, Ronan, who or what is Fara?
Norwegian brand. They've been around for a while. They gravel bikes, road bikes, all road bikes. I think I first heard of them like Eurobike 21. But they could predate that. I think they were actually founded back in 2015 or something. So they've been around for a bit, and they have a new gravel bike now, the GR4, which is available right now. But we may be getting an opportunity to test ride this in a few weeks' time. So haven't laid hands or eyes on an actual bike yet, just have the press release at the moment. And the press release is it's promising big things, Dave. Not
How
just
big
things in terms of like tire clearance, which is 57 mil or 2.2 inch, but big in that Fara they make reference to gravel becoming a more specialized discipline, or having specialized disciplines within it, than that you might want a gravel race bike or a gravel adventure bike. And if you're looking for a gravel race bike, brands may well be taking some of the aero learnings and aero cues from their road offerings and applying them to gravel and this, that, and the other. And Fara were like, well, you shouldn't have to choose. We're just going to make an all-rounder. And so they're promising that it's perfect for both racing and long distance comfort, capability, and like adventuring.
Are you saying it's a bike that backfills for every category of bike?
I think Fara are saying that. I'm not saying anything. My questions are, how do you do both?
Yeah, sure.
Well, without compromising both. And if I do get a chance to ride this bike, that will be what I would like to see and feel and ride. But yeah, long story short, this frame, full carbon frame, weighs claimed weight 970 grams, which is like 200 grams lighter than Fara's previous gravel bike. It has internal frame storage, full cargo and fender mounts should you want to use them. UDH, obviously, as everything is kind of these days. But then in terms of other interesting spec options, it comes with Fara's own modular handlebar stem system, which kind of looks like I'm going to say it looks like a one-piece setup. It doesn't actually, because you can like see exposed bolts and stuff like that on it. But it's got the aero look to it. It's got that sort of Y shaping, kind of familiar from the Cervelo S5 to it. But it is, you can swap out stem lengths and you can swap out handlebar widths. Presumably not easily because it's internal routing, but you can at least do it. So that looks interesting as well. And this bike starts from 6.5 grand for a rival Explorer build with Fulcrum Rapid Red 300 wheels.
It's quite premium for that spec.
It goes up to €9,900 if you want it with SRAM Red Explorer with the Zip 303 Explorer wheels. And the frame modular system, which includes that handlebar and stem, a carbon seat post, ceramic speed, bottom bracket, and headset, will set you back just over €5,000. It's an interesting looking bike.
Your mention of integrated storage and mentioning the frame weight made me just think of something, which is too many brands I'm finding are having integrated storage in their frames and then offering claimed frame weights, but are cheekily not including hardware in inverted commas, which includes the storage hatch. So like you can't use the bike without the storage hatch. Like it's part of like the down tube normally. And it provides you your place where you can put a water bottle or your bin cage bolt sit often in these storage hatches. But frames are just like conveniently cutting a hole in their frame, giving you a claimed weight, and then like, surprise, it's actually 150 grams more than what we claimed because you needed storage hatch. So I don't know if that's the case here. It'd be interesting to know whether that sub 1 kilogram includes all the hardware required to actually use the frame. But I think, one we should aim to be more transparent about wherever possible, because I'm seeing brands sneak this in more and more.
I have to admit, Dave, that your review of the 51 Sika and your reference to the claimed weight and the actual weights, although you were still right in that it is, well, I'm not even saying that you're wrong at all, but I was just surprised at the way you went about it. Even if you take the approach that I would have taken, it still ends up much well above the claimed weight. But I was surprised you had 51 were offering a claimed weight with no hardware, and then you were offering a claimed weight with partial hardware. Yeah. And I was kind of like, neither version is writable. So which you can't write a bare frame with no hardware, and you can't write it with part of the hardware. It's like,
well, 51.
Where should the claim weights be?
Claiming no hardware and no paint, and I was being like, well, I've got a painted frame with a derailleur hanger on it, and it's nowhere near the claimed weight. So I think anyway, I think it's an interesting way. I think personally, I would rather brands do claimed weights for a painted frame of a regular color, so not like their lightest paint, like average paint weight, with basic hardware like required to have a completed frame. So I would include like the derailleur hanger, some bin cage bolts, front derailleur tab. I think, but it does get tricky. So
you know what we need? We need a forum where people who have bought the frames weigh them, and then they put in their measured weight of each.
Interesting.
You could call it weight weenies.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, and
not sure if it would work.
Yeah, I don't know. And you could have someone could then be a star of a bike, a star bike. No, I don't see it happening.
No, not while the Escape Collective forum is around.
No, it's very good. Anyway,
the internal storage and the claim weight jumped out to you. What jumped out to me was the increased tire clearance on this bike, 57 mil or 2.2 inch tire clearance. But also, Fara talk a lot about shorter chainstays and some of the improvements that brings to ride quality. And I'm kind of like, how are both of those things possible? I'm not saying that they're not there. I'm just like, one of the ways to get more tire clearance is to have longer chainstays. So they're
also adding more comfort in the frame is also often achieved with longer chainstays.
Interesting bike that I have some interest in asking some questions about.
Hopefully we can put some answers to them. All right. Well, I think we're going to jump back to something that is on my mind, and as we sort of head towards the back end of this episode, which is T-handled hex keys, more specifically sliding T-handled hex keys, which are the variant that a lot of brands have started to offer in the last 5 to 8 years. And these are basically hex keys that form like a T shape, but then you can slide the top part to almost create like an L-shaped key out of it. And the idea is that you create a more versatile tool that can be spun quickly and sort of can have leverage when you need it, but also fit into tighter spots. And in my experience, they don't always offer what they claim, but they have become a very popular tool. And I've been testing them and buying them from before any cycling brands had them. 10 years ago, there was just 2 brands in the world that offered them, which is these Italian automotive tool brands, Beta and USAG, USAG, and USAG. Yeah.
I don't suck. USAG.
How dare you? Anyway, I think it's and then Silka kind of followed suit and copied that Beta design with its, and since then we've seen a flurry of brands come into the market with these. But that's the topic for this week's Threaded article of sort of the combination of that 10 plus years of testing these, and I feel like I've got my hands on most of them. I'm going to write it up and summarize it and show you my test results, and most importantly, tell you which one is best, because there actually is one that to me stands above the rest. There's a lot of good options, but there is a superior choice.
before you tell us that,
Yeah.
why don't we go to Ask a Wrench, and then you can tell the Escape Collective members what is the best one. What is the only one worth getting?
Yeah. We're gonna keep that cliffhanger. Yeah. So I think you can either get it in the article, or you can get it now in the Ask a Wrench section, which is only available on our members feed.
Take your chances and hope that you get the right one.
Yeah.
Just by buying something online based on reviews that are not done by Dave Rome.
Yeah, chances are I'm going to say it 100% of certainty you won't get this recommendation from any other cycling site. Because it's not I don't even want to say it, but yeah.
Is that because there probably aren't any other cycling sites covering T-handle?
I think so. I think it's a niche enough topic that it's unique to me. Anyway. Yeah, so there we go. We'll save the answer for now. Otherwise, you can head to escapecollective.com and check out the article.
And if you're a member, you'll hear it right now, because we're going to jump into Ask a Wrench.
Yes. You'll also hear some questions and answers from our members related to a chain wear, whether a chain that's been waxed and showing no wear perhaps could still use with replacement. We've got some questions on our best or most favorite spoke nipple wrenches for truing and building wheels, specifically around delicate aluminium nipples. And we've got a question about cleaning disc brakes and sort of our thoughts on that and processes involved. I think the answers there might surprise a few. So, Aaron, let's head in there. And if you're not already on the member only feed, then by now I think you probably know exactly what you need to do to get access. But that is to head to escapecollective.com/join, become a member, and from there you'll get easy access into our member only podcasts and also get access to everything else that we do at Escape Collective. Should we head on over there?
Yeah, well, we don't actually move anywhere. We stay exactly where we are, but yeah.
Okay.
Unless you want to swap desks, but we might not have the episode out in time for this week.
Yeah.
We're a bit far apart.
Yeah. Well, it is a podcast. We're just going to say we're going to change scenery and let's do it. Okay.
This episode was produced, edited, and mixed by Will Jones at Red Bricks Media.